February 1st, 1943, 11:30 a.m. 20,000 feet above the Tunis dockyards, North Africa. The air inside the B-17F, christened the All-American, is thin and freezing. At this altitude, the temperature is 20 degrees below zero. Vapor trails from the engines stream out behind the formation, like white scars cut into the blue African sky. Lieutenant Kendrick Bragg, the pilot, fights the yoke. The bomber is light, having just dropped 4,000 pounds of high explosives on the German-held docks below. The mission is technically over. The formation is turning for home, back to the safety of the base in Biskra, Algeria. But the Luftwaffe doesn't clock out early. Bandits, 2 o'clock high. The warning screams through the interphone system. Bragg grips the controls. He doesn't look. He focuses on holding the formation tight. A B-17 out of formation is a dead B-17. 2 Messerschmitt Bf 109 fighters roll over and dive. They are executing a classic head-on pass, the most terrifying maneuver in aerial warfare. They are closing at a combined speed of 600 miles per hour. Their wing roots sparkle as 20mm cannons and machine guns vomit fire toward the American bomber. The All-American shudders. Bullets hammer the nose cone. The top turret gunner is firing back, the brass casings raining down onto the flight deck floor, rolling under Bragg's boots. The lead German fighter takes a hit. Smoke pours from its engine. The pilot is dead or incapacitated. The plane rolls inverted, out of control. Usually, a damaged fighter will dive away. But this one doesn't. It keeps coming. In the cockpit, Bragg watches the gray belly of the German fighter fill his windshield. It is coming straight for the cockpit. He braces for the impact that will vaporize them all. At the last millisecond, the German plane dips. It misses the cockpit by inches, but it doesn't miss the ship. There's a sound that no aviator ever wants to hear, a sickening, metallic crunch that feels less like a collision and more like the ship has been stepped on by a giant. The entire 30-ton bomber lurches violently upward, whipped like a rag doll. The sound of tearing metal screams over the roar of the 4 Wright Cyclone engines. Then, the plane begins to settle. It feels heavy, sluggish. Bragg fights the controls. The stick feels mushy, vibrating with the lethal resonance. He checks the engines. All 4 are turning. He checks the fuel pressure. Normal. He keys the mic to the waist gunners in the back. Report. What's the damage? There is silence. Then a voice comes back. It is the waist gunner, trembling so hard the words are barely intelligible. Sir, the tail is gone. Bragg doesn't understand. If the tail were gone, they would be in a flat spin, pulling 10 GS, pinned to the walls of the fuselage as the plane spiraled into the Atlas Mountains. But they are flying, straight and level. Repeat. Bragg says, "What is the damage?" "Sir, the German fighter. He went right through us. He cut the tail off. It's just hanging there." Bragg sends his co-pilot to the rear to look. The co-pilot crawls through the bomb bay, past the radio room, and opens the door to the waist section. He stops. He freezes. His brain cannot process the geometry of what he is seeing. There is a hole in the fuselage, but it isn't a bullet hole. It is a gash 16 feet long and 4 feet wide. The German fighter acted like a flying guillotine. It sliced completely through the rear fuselage, severing the vertical fin, the rudder cables, and the electrical systems. The entire tail section, the horizontal stabilizers, the tail gunner's compartment, the massive vertical fin, is physically separated from the rest of the airplane. It is disconnected. It is floating in the slipstream. The co-pilot stares, mouth open. The only thing keeping the tail attached to the main body of the aircraft is a few jagged strips of aluminum skin and one single, bent piece of metal on the bottom of the fuselage. The gap is so wide that the gunners in the waist can see the Sahara Desert passing by through the floor of the plane. The tail section sways back and forth in the wind, twisting, grinding metal on metal. By every law of aerodynamics, by every rule of physics and gravity, the All-American should have snapped in half the moment the German hit it. The drag on that tail section is immense. The structural integrity is zero. The co-pilot scrambles back to the cockpit, his face the color of chalk. "Sir," he whispers, "you can't make any sudden moves. You can't turn. You can't climb. If you sneeze, the tail is going to fall off. Bragg looks at his instruments. They are 300 miles from home. They are flying over enemy territory, and they are flying a plane that is literally held together by a scrap of metal no thicker than a license plate. But the German fighters circling above have seen the damage too. They see the broken back of the B-17. They see the tail wagging like a broken finger. They form up for the kill. They know the prey is wounded. They know it can't maneuver. All they have to do is tap it, and the All-American will disintegrate. Help me bring the past to life. Subscribe and stand with Histified on this incredible journey through time. The skies over Tunisia. Minutes later, the German pilots are professionals. They know a kill when they see one. They form up on the All-American's flank, throttling back to match the bomber's slow, limping speed. They are waiting for the show. They want to see the moment the laws of physics catch up with the American plane, snapping the fuselage in two and sending the debris tumbling into the desert. But the plane doesn't snap. It defies logic. The tail section is oscillating, swaying up and down, left and right, like a pendulum. The gap in the fuselage is so large that the wind is rushing through it with the force of a hurricane, creating massive drag. The German pilots grow impatient. They dive. They spray the crippled bomber with machine gun fire, aiming for the engines, trying to finish the job. Inside the waist of the All-American, the gunners instinctively grab their .50 calibers to return fire. Don't shoot. The command comes from the cockpit. It isn't a request. It is a desperate plea. Bragg knows something the gunners don't. The recoil of a .50 caliber machine gun is significant. It vibrates the airframe. If all the guns fire at once, the harmonic vibration alone could be enough to sever the final strip of metal holding the ship together. The crew has to sit there and take it. They have to let the Germans shoot at them. They watch the tracers zip past the gaping hole in their fuselage, unable to fight back, knowing that a single hit to the tail section will be the end. But why is the tail still attached? To understand this miracle, you have to look beneath the aluminum skin of the B-17. You have to understand the genius of the Boeing engineers who designed her. Most aircraft of the era were built like eggshells, a strong outer skin that supported the weight. If you cracked the shell, the structure failed. This is called monocoque construction. But the B-17 was different. It was built like a bridge. Underneath the skin, the flying fortress had a skeleton. It was a complex lattice of circular frames called bulkheads and long, horizontal beams called longerons. These longerons ran the entire length of the fuselage, acting like the steel cables of a suspension bridge. When the German fighter sliced through the All-American, it severed the top longerons. It severed the side longerons. It cut the diagonal web members. But by a stroke of mathematical luck, the collision left the bottom longerons intact. Think of a suspension bridge where all the cables have been cut except the ones on the floor. The road deck is still holding the weight, but only just. The entire weight of the massive tail section, the horizontal stabilizers, the elevators, the tail wheel, the gunner station, is being leveraged against a few strips of aluminum channel at the very bottom of the fuselage. It creates a terrifying fulcrum. The wind pushing against the vertical tail fin is trying to twist the tail off. The gravity dragging the heavy tail wheel is trying to snap it off. Every time the plane hits a pocket of turbulence, the metal groans. The crew can hear the rivets popping, pinging like bullets inside the cabin as the stress shears them off one by one. The German fighters, frustrated and low on fuel, finally peel away. They can't believe what they are seeing. They likely radio back to base that the bomber is probable kill, convinced it cannot possibly make it back to the coast. But now, Bragg faces a new enemy, aerodynamics. The All-American is losing altitude. She is heavy and dragging the broken tail like a parachute. Bragg pushes the throttles forward to maintain airspeed. But as the speed increases, the tail begins to wag more violently. It is a deadly feedback loop. Go too slow, and the plane stalls and falls out of the sky. Go too fast, and the wind pressure rips the tail off. Bragg has to find the Goldilocks speed, a razor-thin margin where the plane stays in the air but doesn't tear itself apart. He flies gently. He uses the engines to steer, avoiding the rudder pedals, because moving the rudder puts stress on the tail. It is a feat of airmanship that requires the touch of a surgeon. Inside the plane, the crew is silent. They have donned their parachutes. They are looking at the hole. They are looking at the desert floor 15,000 feet below. The navigator plots a course for the emergency field at Biskra. It is 300 miles away. That is 90 minutes of flight time. 90 minutes of listening to the metal scream. As they cross the Atlas Mountains, the air gets turbulent. The plane bucks. The tail swings wildly, twisting 10 degrees to the left, then 10 degrees to the right. The gap in the fuselage widens and closes like a breathing mouth. The radio operator sends a message to base. Coming in, heavily damaged. Request emergency crews. He doesn't tell them the tail is cut off. He doesn't think they would believe him. Finally, the airfield appears on the horizon. A strip of packed sand and wire mesh in the middle of the desert. To the crew, it looks like salvation. But Bragg knows the hardest part is yet to come. To land a B-17, you have to slow down. You have to lower the landing gear. You have to lower the flaps. All of these things create drag. All of these things change the airflow over the tail. And when the wheels touch the ground, the shock of the impact will send a jolt of energy straight up the fuselage to the weakest point. The All-American has survived the air. Now it has to survive the earth. 12:50 p.m. Biskra Airfield, Algeria. On the ground, the scene is routine. Ambulances are idling with their engines running. Fire trucks are positioned at the runway threshold. The ground crews are shielding their eyes against the desert sun, counting the specks returning from the raid. They see the All-American on final approach. From a distance, she looks normal. She is straight. Her wings are level. But as she gets closer, the optical illusion breaks. A murmur goes through the crowd on the tarmac. A mechanic drops his wrench. An ambulance driver stands up on the running board of his truck, squinting in disbelief. My God, someone whispers. Where is the rest of it? In the cockpit, Lieutenant Bragg is sweating through his flight suit. He is flying on a razor's edge. He has to bring the 30-ton bomber down gently, like a feather, onto a rough desert strip. Gear down, he orders. The hydraulic pumps whine. The main wheels drop and lock. The drag hits the plane, and the tail wobbles violently, fishtailing in the slipstream. The metal groans, a high-pitched shriek of aluminum tearing further. Bragg eases the throttles back. The ground rushes up. This is the critical moment. A B-17 is a tail dragger. When it lands, the main wheels hit first, and then the tail wheel settles onto the runway. But if the tail wheel hits the ground with any force, the leverage will snap the fuselage instantly. The rear of the plane will break off, dig into the sand, and flip the bomber onto its back, crushing the crew. Bragg has to keep the tail flying as long as possible. The main wheels kiss the earth. Screech. Smoke puffs from the tires. Bragg holds the yoke forward, fighting the instinct to flare. He keeps the tail high in the air, balancing the massive plane on its main wheels like a circus performer. He lets the speed bleed off. 90 knots, 80 knots, 70 knots. As the lift evaporates, the tail begins to settle. It comes down slowly, agonizingly. The tail wheel touches the sand. The crew braces for the snap. They wait for the sound of the fuselage breaking in two. It doesn't happen. The All-American rolls to a stop at the end of the runway. The engines cough and die. The propellers spin down to a halt. For a moment, there is total silence on the airfield. No one moves. It is as if the laws of physics are holding their breath, waiting to see if the plane realizes it is dead. Then, the waist door pops open. The crew tumbles out onto the sand. They don't celebrate. They don't cheer. They just run. They run away from the plane as fast as their legs can carry them, expecting it to collapse at any second. They stop 50 yards away and turn around. Now, for the first time, they see what the German fighter pilot saw. They see what the co-pilot saw. The ground crew rushes up, but they stop short, forming a silent semicircle around the rear of the plane. A combat photographer runs up, raises his camera, and snaps the shutter. That photograph will become one of the most famous images of World War II. It shows the All-Americans sitting on the hardstand. The tail section is connected by a few shreds of metal, so thin they look like lace. The left horizontal stabilizer is completely gone. The fuselage is slashed open. It looks like a fish that has been bitten in half by a shark, yet somehow kept swimming. The All-American never flew again. The engineers who examined her on the ground were baffled. They climbed inside the fuselage and realized that the structure had been compromised so severely that the tail should have twisted off the moment the plane banked for home. They ran the numbers. They checked the stress loads. By all rights, the plane was mathematically dead, but it had held together for 90 minutes. It had held together through enemy fire. It had held together through the landing. And then, hours after the crew had walked away, after the adrenaline had faded and the sun began to set, the All-American finally gave up. As the ground crew watched, the tail section groaned. It sagged, and then, with a quiet sigh of metal fatigue, it collapsed onto the ground. The plane had waited until her men were safe. This story became more than just a morale booster for the 97 Bomb Group. It became a legend that defined the B-17 flying fortress. The All-American proved that the B-17 wasn't just a machine. It was a tank with wings. It was built with a redundancy and a structural toughness that no other aircraft of the war could match. The Germans had faster planes. The British had heavier payloads. But the Americans had a plane that could be butchered in the sky and still bring you home. It created a bond between the airmen and their machine that bordered on the spiritual. When a young man climbed into a B-17, he knew that no matter how bad the flak got, no matter how many fighters swarmed him, the fortress would fight to keep him alive. Lieutenant Bragg and his crew survived the war, but the photo of their ship remains. It is a black and white testament to American engineering, to the skill of a pilot who flew a broken bird home, and to the sheer, stubborn refusal of the B-17 to die. It was broken, it was beaten, but it was indestructible.